Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Samuel passed along a story to me knowing how much I love talking about civil asset forfeiture, which in my mind is one of the biggest, most grievous things wrong happening in our country. And the strange things, I've done several videos about civil asset forfeiture, and that's just the idea the police can pull you over, for instance, and they see that you got money, and they go, oh, we're just going to take the money from you. And if you want your money back, you got to sue us. And they can take the money from you, even if you've done nothing wrong. Even if they have no suspicion, they just take your money. And they can also take your car. They can take other stuff from you as well. And the sad part is that many people have heard about the case of Tim's. And the Supreme Court earlier this year ruled that civil asset forfeiture, if it's couched as being a fine, the amount of the fine cannot be disproportionate to the crime someone's charged with. But they never bothered to address simple civil asset forfeiture. And that is the idea that the police can just take your stuff. And as long as they don't call it a fine, they don't run afoul of Tim's. I kid you not. And so, sadly, even under this video, I'm going to get a dozen comments immediately going, the Supreme Court's already ruled on this. And the news I'm going to tell you about happened yesterday. So the Supreme Court's ruling in Tim's does not affect this. This is a case out of Buffalo. Samuel passed it along to me. The headline from the newspaper says, and I could be mispronouncing this and I apologize, Cheektowaga man suing sheriff for return of car and $80,000 seized in traffic stop. Now, the article is written by Harold McNeil and Matthew Spina, the Buffalo News, and the man is suing the Erie County Sheriff, Timothy Howard, and a sheriff's deputy for the return of $80,110 and a 2012 luxury vehicle, both of which were seized during a traffic stop in August. Now, here's the part. His attorney, Robert Goldstein, said his client in the lawsuit was not charged with a crime. He wasn't even given a ticket. He hasn't been given any traffic infractions since that day, Goldstein told the Buffalo News. According to the lawsuit, the man was pulled over about 1 o'clock in the afternoon at an unspecified location in Buffalo. The sheriff's deputy forcefully removed Terrell from his vehicle, which is a 2012 Infiniti, currently worth about $25,000. The deputy seized the car, and then they searched it, according to the lawsuit. And then when they searched it, they found the cash. A man with Terrell's name and date of birth was convicted of drug-related charges in Pennsylvania 7 years ago, but it's unclear how that connection would make any sense because it's not the same person, and that record appears to have played no role in the decision to seize the property, but somebody points out that there's a connection possibly? Who knows? So that's from the Susquehanna County records. The attorney told the newspaper the vehicle was stopped. They could not find an excuse to search it. They then seized it. And of course, once they seize it, they've got to search it to do an inventory of it, even though they had no reason to seize it. And then after they seized it, I believe they conducted a search and found the money in the car. And he had the money with him because he was planning on starting a business. When we requested the money back, they said they'd forwarded it to the Customs and Immigration Service. And the Customs and Immigration Service is often the federal branch that's tasked with helping deprive people of their cash. I'm sorry, the way they put it in the story is U.S. Customs is in charge of forfeiture proceedings for the federal government. Forfeiture proceedings. Federal law lets the police agencies seize cash if they believe it is ill-gotten, and then they seek federal court permission to keep the money once the authorities establish a basis for their suspicion or probable cause. Often, that involves indications from a drug-sniffing dog that the currency bears traces of illegal drugs. And by the way, they've done studies on this. You take any cash out of circulation and ask a dog, do you smell drugs? The dog's going to go, uh-huh. Exactly like that. With civil forfeiture, owners need not be convicted or even charged, but they can still lose cash, cars, homes, and other property, says the Institute for Justice, which is a nonprofit libertarian law firm based in Virginia that's seeking to limit government power. The law enforcement agencies that seized the property reap some or all of the proceeds, the Institute says. And that's one of the problems with this law is it incentivizes, it rewards the police for just taking money because they get to keep what they take. And as we've said before, any time you tell a law enforcement agency you will profit from doing this kind of behavior, they'll do that kind of behavior because that's human nature. Okay, so if you say, for instance, if you write a bunch of tickets and you get rewarded for it, they'll write more tickets. And if you say you can go out and seize money from people and keep it, They're going to seize money from people and keep it. This shouldn't take like Dr. Joyce Brothers and a team of psychologists to explain it to you. I mean, this is obvious. So the sheriff's office, which typically does not comment on pending litigation, did not comment when asked about this incident. Terrell's complaint alleges the sheriff's deputy had no legal right to seize anything from him because he was not charged with having committed any crimes, wasn't even given any traffic tickets. Just pulled him over and took his stuff. And what's funny is a lot of people under my videos on this topic go, what's the difference between this and highway robbery? There isn't one. You're being robbed in the highway. That's highway robbery. Goldstein said the fact that his client was carrying around an unusually large sum of money is not evidence that a crime was committed. And it's not. He was going to do some banking, and he'd gathered it from various sources, and that was the purpose of it, as part of a business transaction. Goldstein declined to share his client's occupation, said that Terrell's job status is irrelevant to the case. Our position is it doesn't matter what he does or doesn't do. The situation is they had no legitimate purpose in taking it, referring to the cash and the vehicle. They found no drugs, they found no guns, and just because someone has a large amount of money on them during the day or at any time, you don't have the right to take the money or the car without a crime being committed. And that sounds pretty reasonable to most people. The attorney continued by saying, all they have is a bunch of suspicions and they weren't able to follow through on it. Our position is they should have followed through on it before giving his property away. In addition to the property seized from him, Terrell also is seeking compensation for the money it cost him to rent a vehicle since August 20th because when they took his car, he no longer had his car. I know it's painfully obvious to make these kinds of statements, but if you want to put this in a nutshell, a man was driving near Buffalo with $80,000 in cash on him in his Infiniti automobile. The police pulled him over, took his money, took his car, and didn't even bother writing him a ticket. And that's perfectly legal under civil asset forfeiture laws. And so if you might ask Steve, as a lawyer, what would this man do? What is his next step? Unfortunately, his next step is he's got to hire an attorney, and he's got to file a lawsuit, and he's got to go to court, not to prove that his money was taken from him, but to prove that he actually owned the money lawfully and prove he's not guilty of anything. And so, yes, you got to go to court and disprove a negative. Okay? They don't have to prove anything. You have to disprove some stuff. And anybody will tell you that disproving stuff is actually kind of hard to do. And it's also kind of weird. Because in America, generally speaking, you're innocent until proven guilty. Unless your stuff is taken. In which case, it's guilty until you can prove it innocent. And that is what's wrong with civil asset forfeiture. It's why people are going so nuts about this. And I hope people continue to go nuts. That's why I'm promoting and talking about and advertising these stories. People need to hear about this stuff. They need to get angry about this stuff. If you live in the Buffalo area, tell everyone you know that this is happening. But it's happening everywhere in America. So I do the stories and they cross my desk. Samuel, thanks for passing that along. I appreciate that very much. And I will keep you on top of this story along with all the other stories as they come along. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Lehto's Law.